The Lord has guided us in the past, and if we forget the way He has worked with us in the past, we shall not know how He leads us today. Welcome, brethren, to another study. It's called an in-depth study of Ezekiel 47, Eastward River, Part 1. The reason we're bringing this study today is because we've noticed over the last few months, this issue is an important one that we as the ministry of pre-11th hour will have to deal with. And as such, we've decided that it's something we need to get down to business right now. We need to study this issue. We need to know about this leading. How is the Lord leading us today? We come from Mountaindale, and we've temporarily set up headquarters in Montalba, Texas. But that is not in accordance with the Eastward River. I think many of us would agree with that. And so we need to know how we are to move forward. When the time comes and the Lord will let us know that probation is over for Mountaindale. In other words, they've been given a certain amount of probationary time to come in line with the truth. Now, some of you may say, well, where do you get this idea of probationary time? Well, stay with us. We're going to go into this study right now, and you'll see clearly how the Lord has led us in the past. And if we know that, then we know how He's leading us today. We know how He's going to lead us tomorrow. The key is knowing how the Lord has led us. Okay, so we ask that you kneel and pray. Claim the promise of John 16:13, and He will be faithful. As we always say in every one of our presentations, He will be faithful to guide us into all truth. We can't be haphazardly watching a study and thinking, oh, I'll get what I want out of it. No, you ask the Lord, I ask the Lord to guide us. Claim that promise of John 16:13, and He will guide us into all truth. All right, let us begin. So we're going to ask our first question, and that is, has the Lord given probationary time for His error-filled leadership, His church, to come in line with the truth? So we're going to go back into history and look at our king's example of this. All right, so in Luke 21, verse 1 to 4, and he looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into this treasury. And he saw a certain poor widow putting in 2 mites. So he said, truly I say to you, that this poor widow has put in more than all. For all these out of their abundance have put in offerings for God. But she, out of her poverty, put in all the livelihood she had. So this is very, very profound, and it's a lesson that we need to look at. So let us dwell deeply upon this very, very important lesson. First, the Lord praises the act of a poor widow putting in her all, the 2 mites. Second, what was this church about, and what was she doing during the time of praise of our King? Was it not in firm opposition to the Lord? Did they not even seek to destroy His message and Himself? Yes, they did. So what do we get out of this? Why is the Lord commending a church, the woman's act, and commending her putting in her 2 mites to a church that was against Him? There's something here we have to know. So what do we see here? Well, we see the Lord striving and long suffering toward His church. A probation. Even though the Jewish church, His church at that time, was error-filled and leading many astray, He still bore with them and gave them time to come into His truth. In fact, even after they killed Him, there was given time still. So this is our first historical example and shows how our King dealt with His error-filled headquarters, His church. Notice he did not throw out the Jewish church as he proclaimed the truth. No, he gave them time. So too, subsequent future headquarters shows this same probationary transfer. It is just that we don't look at the lessons as we should. The Lord's counsel explains the root cause of this neglect. So let's look at the reference here that'll explain it. If all present truth believers would clearly think the matter through, they would realize that as God has promised to take the reins in his own hands, it is his duty to fulfill his promise. Then all their confusion and perplexity over some aspects of the work, which begets irrational questionings and criticizing, would consequently cease, says the Spirit of prophecy. Close reasoners and logical thinkers are few. How many men in this age of the world fail to go deep enough? They only skim the surface. They will not look closely enough to see the difficulties and grapple with them, and will not examine every important subject which comes before them with a thoughtful, prayerful study, and with sufficient caution and interest to see the real point at issue. They talk of matters which they have not fully and carefully weighed. Fundamentals of Christian Education, page 27, Testimonies for the Church, volume 4, page 361. This reference can be found in 3 Symbolic Code, number 56, page 7. Now, we're going to go ahead and look at the announcement organ that the Lord has always used. And this is important because this is how the Lord makes announcements throughout his present truth field. And that's found in the very first Symbolic Code, number 1, page 1. In the interest of the SDA denomination, it is certain that all concerned will be glad to know that the first of a series of news items relative to present truth is now being circulated herein. Therefore, let us pray to the end that it will grow with mushroom speed, have the fabric of a palm tree, the grip of octopus, clear as crystal, glittering as transparent gold, moving as appearance of a flash of lightning, Ezekiel 1:14, sweet as honey, Ezekiel 3:3, to those who are searching for truth as for hidden treasure, Matthew 13:44, and as bitter as wormwood, Revelation 8:11, to those who seek to enjoy the pleasures of Egypt for a season. Again, Symbolic Code, Volume 1, Number 1, page 1. So let's not lose track of this, brethren, that the Symbolic Code has always been the news announcement organ that the Lord has used for his transfers in our present truth time. So our first point is clear. The Lord has given probation first, before transferring his church headquarters and its leaders. Therefore, the first transfer, the Jewish church to the apostolic church, was official after a certain amount of probation time was given. We'll now look at the transfer that occurred many centuries later from the SDA church to the Davidian Seventh-day Adventist church. Or I should say, Davidian Seventh-day Adventist movement. There's no such thing as a church. Let us keep that in mind. Davidian Seventh-day Adventists do not have a church. And those that teach that, particularly Wave Sheaf Ministries, are in complete error. And we hope that nobody is snagged with that false teaching. In this report, we're not going to deal with the details of the individual transfers. We have already done that in one of our Hear Ye the Rod blog posts. So we're going to put the link down in the description box if you want to know more about that. So Sister Ellen White and our SDA church, as we present truth believers know, became God's church in 1844. A small handful of brethren were called by the Lord to be his next movement and headquarters. This church continued to do his work all the way up to the year 1934. The Lord's publication, his official symbolic code, gave the announcement, and it's something that we're going to now look at and get more into. And that is found in Symbolic Code, Volume 1, Number 5, page 9, and that was 1934. The instruction in the Shepherd's Rod, Volume 1, page 251, regarding tithe proves that we have paid our honest part all the way. It says that the tithe should be paid to the old SDA organization. But now, since the leading part of the denomination has rejected the sealing message of 144,000 and is passing on to the people a refutation of its subject matter to justify their actions, doing all they can to prevent the people from coming in contact with the truth, the action of the shepherd's rod in calling not only for the tithe, but also for the offerings to be brought in for the support of the message of present truth is divinely approved and justified. For present truth has always constituted God's storehouse. So we see here the announcement made in 1934 that now is the time where the transfer is in effect. And they were calling for the tithes and offerings at that time. So it's noteworthy also to make note of in 1934 that the last pleading of the Lord to the SDA church occurred when the conference and Brother Hodoff decided to hold a study. And we know that to be the great study in Los Angeles in 1934. Well, we know the fiasco behind that. But the main point is that the Lord was pleading with his church and had them all together in one room to study this message out, to confirm that it was the message of truth. But unfortunately, the leaders rejected it, and they became even more determined to go against the message. And of course, you can find the details of that conference study in track 7. So the message of the rod was given to the church and promoted to the leaders from 1929 to 1934. A time of probation of the SDA church to accept the Lord's message before the Lord transferred his headquarters. But let's also look at a key to this transfer. And what was that key? It was the Eastward course. At this time, we are to make the most important move since the message found us. Therefore, we earnestly solicit the prayers of every believer in present truth, so that there be nothing done which God cannot bless. It has been evident for some time that it would soon be necessary to seek a more central location for the office in order to serve the whole field efficiently. So those at headquarters have been praying very earnestly over this matter for many months, and as they kept on praying for light, the Lord finally indicated definitely that beautiful Southern California was no longer to remain center of his work for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, but an eastward course was to be seen in the stream from that fountain, which is a swell into the great river of Ezekiel's prophecies. And plans were soon formulated whereby a thorough search could be made in the territory indicated by the Lord where the future headquarters were to be found. 1 Symbolic Code, number 10, page 1 and page 3. So not only do we see that because of the rejection of present truth by the leading SDA brethren, another key was given, and that is that the Lord wanted the work to head according to its eastward river, his Ezekiel prophecy. And the Lord's prophet announced that right here in the Symbolic Code as one of the main reasons why they were to head into the Waco area. Okay, so let's go on to our summary of part 1, and that is that number 1, the Lord gives probation time for his error-filled leadership to come into line with his truth. Number 2, the Lord's last message of Elijah starts out in the eastward course according to prophecy. In part 2, we'll take up more of Ezekiel 47 prophecy and what we need to know in regard to the Lord guiding us today. As inspiration says, we have nothing to fear for the future except as we shall forget the way of the Lord has led us. And that's found in Testimonies to Ministers, page 31. So, brethren, this is very, very important that we need to go through our history to see how the Lord is leading us today. Unfortunately, we see so many winds of doctrine teaching such perverted truths. One teacher will say, oh, the Lord forgot or does not now lead corporate work. He wants individuals all over the world to answer to no one but themselves and produce the message from their home or from their group. And this is how the message goes out. And such crazy teachings. And another group will say, oh, you have to come on to our property. The charity is here. And when that time comes, if you're not on our property, you're not going to be saved, and so forth and so on, brethren. But these people don't study our history. They don't see how the Lord has worked. And so in this series, I don't know how many we're going to have. We could have 2, 3 parts. We're going to get to the bottom of how he leads us. And this Ezekiel 47 Eastward course is very important to know. So again, we thank you for joining us. And until next time, may the Lord continue to guide you into all truth. Amen.